my head so I can find the video easier. Memory. Okay. So where did we leave off with dementia, Alzheimer's, memory, age-associated memory impairment? Let's review. We covered all the nutrients, right? Like folic acid and omega-3 fatty acids and the phosphatidylserine. We talked about those things, right?
Cerebral circulatory stimulants.
So did we do the cerebral circulatory stimulants or not?
Ginkgo, rosemary, garlic bun. Ginkgo minor.
Okay.
Cinnamon.
Okay, so we did do those. Okay. So we did cerebral circulatory stimulants. Okay, we're going to challenge ourselves here. So think for 1 second. Okay. We also have another action category with dementia and memory. It's going to be lymphatics. Remember how we talked about the lymph is what's removing a lot of byproducts of all the brain's activity and the beta amyloid and all these compounds that create these cobwebs that eventually create Alzheimer's and dementia changes in the brain. So there's not a lot of lymph herbs that have been shown to be super helpful to the brain, but one of them that's really resinous has a fair amount of research. Well, guess what it is? Close.
What?
Myrrh. So myrrh is one, remember we talked about myrrh, it's one of those herbs that cross the blood-brain barrier that we talked about last week, the blood-brain barrier. And it has a bunch of compounds in it that are neuroprotective, right? Meaning they protect brain cells and neurons in the brain, which can help prevent the dementia, Alzheimer's, memory loss process. I feel like we should review the brain real quick. We're gonna make a flow chart. So here's your brain. Well, I can't draw. Okay. So here we go. Ready? Let's do like a quick review. We got nutrients. We need nutrients for brain. Everything, right? To even function, for brain tissue to be built, for everything, we need nutrients. We talked about a lot of those, right? Like your B vitamins, your omega-3s, the phospholipid. We need lymphatic herbs. Why? To remove waste. Remember, the brain is kind of in a sea of marrow, they say in Chinese medicine. It's just surrounded by all of this gooey and fluids, and that is where your lymph is interacting and draining and removing waste. We don't remove the waste, it's going to trigger all these inflammation processes that trigger Alzheimer's, dementia, memory loss, all these things. Okay. We also need blood flow. So we need circulatory stimulants, right? That is bringing nutrients, that is bringing blood flow, that is bringing stimulation to all the neurons of the brain. It's a lot of these herbs like rosemary and ginkgo have been shown to activate the parts of our brain that are associated with memory and focus by when they measure the blood flow changes of the brain, like after you take ginkgo or rosemary, there's a change in those parts of the brain within about an hour. So this has all been measured like MRI activity and other things. So they actually make that part of the brain come alive by changing blood flow. Okay, you'll need blood flow. Remember also, if our blood flow is blocked, we're going to get those beta amyloid and those other toxins building up, because together with the lymph stuff just cannot get out of there and detoxify it. Okay. And if we get good blood flow, we're also going to get all these other antioxidant type compounds into the brain so they can protect all the brain cells. Okay. Okay. So there is some waste removal. We have some electrical changes in the brain and blood flow changes. Okay. Okay. We also have herbs and supplements that are going to affect neurotransmitters, right? Like serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, especially acetylcholine, right? So a lot of the herbs, and remember, a lot of the herbs we're talking about are going to kind of probably target more than one area, right? So a lot of herbs are also going to directly affect neurotransmitters. This is like mechanically how our brain is going to create concentration, memory, focus, right? Okay. Also, we know our immune system plays a huge role in inflammation and brain health also. This is why things like astragalus and schizanderberry and reishi mushroom, which have these immune balancing effects, also have been shown to have a lot of protective effects on the brain too. Okay. Okay. We also have the nerve aspect, right? Like anxiety, stress, the role of creating stress and inflammation in our body, affecting our brain. And also just feeling anxious and stressed is kind of the opposite of feeling calm, focused, and alert. So a lot of nervines can be of a really big benefit here too, right? We also have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory herbs, so maybe it's better to have this as we're talking about all these things. Is that more helpful? We talk about like each herb or group and how they plug into this a little bit. So these antioxidants or these anti-inflammatory compounds are going to help keep brain cells healthy, right? They're going to protect them in some way from stress. Remember, toxins are causing damage to brain cells, stress is causing damage, viruses, there's all kinds of things affect the brain health. Everybody's okay with this? Okay. Okay, I feel like there should be questions about that. Anybody have questions about that? No. Complete grasp of it. Done. No questions? Like there should be a question online or something.
They will use slightly, thank you,
Get out of the way.
slightly, thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right, we're going to get a little more real quick review of this mechanism. So we have this, just to review, acetylcholine. This is the neurotransmitter, the chemical in your brain that we know is largely associated with memory, concentration, focus, alertness, okay? There is a enzyme called acetylcholine esterase. Sorry, let's spell that. Acetylcholine esterase. Remember, if you remember from chemistry, the ace on the end means to break down and digest, right? So there is an enzyme in the brain called acetylcholine esterase that breaks this down. So you have to make more. Okay. So how certain herbs work, some of them stimulate the production of acetylcholine, the actual chemical associated with focus and concentration and memory. Some of them stop this enzyme from breaking it down, like this. Boom, boom, no allowed, right? This is how antidepressants work, right? We have serotonin. And a lot of these antidepressants don't actually affect serotonin, they prevent it from being broken down by some enzyme. Okay, so this is how like bacopa, rosemary, ginkgo, one of the many mechanisms that they do is a simple little chemistry cool thing. They either make your brain secrete more of this, or they stop it from being broken down. They stop this enzyme from being so active. Okay. That's really cool. So like rosemary, ginkgo, myrrh, like almost do all of these things at once. I mean, this is not all exclusive to one herb, but I think this is like a funner way of maybe looking at the big picture. Okay. So everybody's okay with that? A little nerdy chemistry. Okay. So we have this term called a nootropic. Which is what all these people on Reddit and anti-aging and all these kind of like what do you call them? Pop researchers, like a lot of people that, you know, think they're gonna never age and die and be alive forever. They're really focused on this term called nootropic, which kind of means like a drug for smartness or a smart drug. So that term is used a lot in advertising in America and in discussion, but we're just really talking about memory herbs, right? So that term was thrown out there a lot. So a lot of the a lot of the older research showed that there was like blood flow changes. And a lot of the somewhat newer research focuses on this neurotransmitter pathway, but the newest research is now showing more like things like ashwagandha and ginkgo and bacopa have these antioxidants that just protect your brain cells from dying too. So this is like a lot of the newer research is because this is where we're moving in Western medicine, right? All disease is from inflammation. I mean, I don't totally believe that, but this is where Western medicine is moving. I think 80% of the they're saying that 80% of diseases are triggered by inflammation or caused by inflammation. And dementia and Alzheimer is definitely an inflammatory process. So these things like ashwagandha and ginkgo and bacopa are going to just get more and more attention. It's not going to go away. Okay, is that pretty exciting? Okay, so everybody's okay with this. some of these herbs can actually even affect gene expression that relate to genes. That are associated with like dementia and Alzheimer's. Okay. 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 So let's go to the herbs. I'm gonna keep this up, okay? That's a fun little brain map. Does anybody know how to make a little brain map in a Word document? Like, anybody know how to draw this like in a Word document?
Yeah,
No?
I can do that.
Could you?
Yeah,
Thank
You
you.
have a like an app that does that?
no, I can just make it PowerPoint or something, yeah.
Okay. I love those little happy things, but I just can't ever figure them out. Flustered with them. Okay. Okay, so let's go through. Okay. So now we're gonna go through the different categories besides circulatory stimulants, now that we have this roadmap. So we did circulatory stimulants, we did lymphatics. Now we're gonna do these so-called nootropics or smart drugs or smart herbs, right? So other lymphatic herbs are going to obviously affect the brain, but myrrh is probably one of the few that has been researched to clearly show that activity. So nootropics, some of the best, probably one of the best herbs that we have here is going to be one we talked about already, which is bacopa. Right? Bacopa herb. Bacopa we talked about fits so many of these categories. It increases blood flow to the brain. You know this now. It affects neurotransmitters. It's anti-inflammatory, antioxidant. And it affects the nerves in the nervous system. So we said bacopa, in addition to doing all that, increases concentration, focus. It's been shown to increase IQ scores, test scores. It helps increase awareness with thoughts and emotion and consciousness. I know an old naturopathic doctor years ago that said like an ADD, he felt like it helped both hemispheres of the brain communicate with each other more efficiently, which is where a lot of early ADD research was showing there was like this disharmony, right? That's why when we talk about like training and neurological training, everything's, they call it dual hemispheric, right? Like Tai Chi is set up where you're doing everything to the right, everything to the left, because you want to train your nervous system and like both sides of your brain. Functional workouts have a lot of that, right? Yeah. Okay, so one of the main ingredients in bacopa is bacopicides. And they've been specifically researched, yeah, to affect acetylcholine, protect healthy brain cells, nerve, and blood in the brain. Wonderful, shown to do all of these things. But remember, in Ayurveda, this is one of our main herbs that we do for when there's been damage to the brain from trauma, head trauma. Remember, drug use, illegal drug use, very damaging to the brain. Right? People that have ever did meth or cocaine or alcohol abuse is a drug abuse, right? So alcohol abuse, remember, alcohol kills brain cells, just flat out, right?
What just after meth?
Cocaine or really any drug, right? Or lots of medications also. Okay. Remember, we were always a lot of scientists said that in natural medicine, we knew it wasn't true. That, once nerve or brain cells die, they can never regenerate or resynthesize. I mean, we know now that's totally not true. But like 20 years ago, that was like a big argument between the medical world and the natural medicine. But we now know that yes, brain cells can and neurons can regenerate. Right? Take home message, right? It's never too late to have brain health. Yeah.
How much do you think it can increase your IQ?
I don't know. A lot of that research was all done in India, so I don't know, like socially, like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what that was picking up on. I'm not sure. Like Gatucola and Bacola have both been shown to increase IQ score. I don't really necessarily know how that works, but they've been studied. I mean, IQ scores are very like based on culture and gender, all kinds of other, it's complicated. So they've been criticized a lot. So I don't know how it does that, but it's kind of cool.
I take more smarts.
Yeah, what's that?
I would take more smarts.
Yeah. Okay, so one of our best nootropics is going to be another great one that's super underutilized is going to be cacao. Right? Chocolate. Cacao bean is a cerebral circulatory stimulant, increases blood flow. It definitely increases all these neurotransmitters, right? Serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, right? It's also extremely antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. And if we got good cacao, right, it's also got some healthy fats and different things in it too. So, good old cacao. This would be like more raw chocolate, right? Dark chocolate, minimally processed chocolate. But there's actually been quite a bit of research by the chocolate industry on like memory and Alzheimer's treatment with chocolate. There's a lot of patents on chocolate drugs out there. I don't know if you know that. It's like a ton of patents. Hershey's and Mars Corporation, all these drug companies own all these patents on chocolate for all these different medical uses. So
From Hershey's and Mars.
Right.
That seems insane.
oh yeah, they have the money to do the research. They just throw money at it.
But they've got to be making it without sugar because that's inflammatory.
Yeah.
They're like more supplements that they've
Okay.
been researching and patenting.
Yeah.
So they're not for sale really, but they keep all the patents for later. So. Okay, so chocolate. Remember, chocolate also increases concentration and focus. Remember, chocolate also opens the heart emotionally. So it's like a catalyst to the heart. Remember, the heart kind of regulates the brain also. Okay.
So when somebody's craving chocolate, does that mean they're craving an emotional release?
Often it means people, yeah, either need their heart open or their mind kind of like activated. And you get your dopamine, which is like part of the addiction type cycles. It's your dopamine boost, right?
Not magnesium.
I mean, magnesium deficiencies could be part of that too. Most people that they say crave chocolate are magnesium deficient. Mhm. Okay. Okay, so other nootropics, we also have a closely related compound, right? Ready? Coffee bean,
Yeah.
right? Coffee increases blood flow to the brain, right? It affects neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, dopamine. I don't know if it affects serotonin. Also oddly has some antioxidant type activity. So coffee, yeah, has been shown more to promote concentration, focus, mental alertness. I don't know that it's been shown to like slow dementia, but I know the antioxidants in coffee have been shown to protect brain cells. So maybe we want to say like anti-aging to the brain, right? The other nootropic, I don't think we've mentioned yet, is gonna be Gatu Cola. Gatu Cola herb. This is one of my all-time favorite herbs. We covered Gatu Cola, didn't we? Yes, we covered that quite a bit. So Gatu Cola, again, a little bit of blood flow to the brain, not a lot. A lot affecting the nerves of the brain, and it also changes the, let's say, electrical activity. Remember, Gatu Cola stimulates also the part of the brain that's associated with kind of concentration and focus. How is Gatu Cola? Remember, Gatu Cola is also one of the main. Where's our detox? Let's do this one. Ready? We're gonna add one. Metal detox. Remember, heavy metals often we said cross the blood-brain barrier, causing often really long-term damage to the brain. Like heavy metals like lead, mercury, right? Even excess iron and excess minerals can do this. So remember one of the most powerful things that Gatu Cola does that I have seen just work again and again is where when people have brain and neurological changes and damage from lead poisoning. We talked about that. But I just want to remind people of that. It has, I mean, because when you have lead poisoning, you get your blood level of lead checked. And you can take Gatu Cola, and I guarantee you in 3 months later, it is drastically lower.
I had a pediatrician think that there was a mistake on a lead test on one of my kiddos that I had. Because when I brought her to you and you put her on there for lead, and it was like 3 months or 6 months later, or whatever.
Yeah.
She was like, there must have been a mistake on it.
Yeah. They'll often say that, and it forgot to Cola to do that, it only takes about 3 months.
Yeah.
So many kids with lead poisoning and just drop it to almost normal right away. So it's like extremely clinically impressive. But remember, one of the coolest things about Gatu Cola is that it creates. You probably don't know how it works on the brain to do this, but we know through Ayurvedic wisdom, it increases a feeling of peace and calm and mental clarity that is unique from any other herb we talk about for memory. It also has been shown to be anti-inflammatory to neurons and the brain. So it's been shown to slow the progression of Alzheimer's and dementia and memory loss. But on a practical level, when we take it, we can expect to have this Zen-like kind of feeling in our mind. And Ayurveda, this is used during fasting a lot because since ancient times, because often when you fast, you feel kind of off or grouchy or discombobulated. So it creates this peaceful state of mind where you're not even like craving food. You just kind of feel more like a sense of bliss. So remember, Gatu Cola is probably the main herb we have for enhancing meditation. It's been shown to increase more of the what they call the theta state in the brain, right? Which is like when they study people that are deep meditators, like Tibetan monks, their theta wave brain activity is really high. I like to think I can go on YouTube and do my theta wave meditations. The same benefit, but probably not as deep, but probably gets a good benefit, right? So Gatu Cola is, remember, one of the main herbs for damage to the brain caused by drugs or lack of oxygen. So anybody who's ever drowned, anybody with children who are in the birthing canal too long and have brain damage, or other choking victims, stroke. This is why we use it for stroke recovery. Okay, so it's one of the most powerful herbs we have. Okay. Next one, pretty common stuff here. For nootropics, green tea. Right? Shown to improve facial recall, memory recall, decrease age-related cognitive decline. It also affects these beta amyloid compounds. It has a very much an antioxidant protective effect on the brain. Just good old green tea from matcha. Right? We also know that green tea contains this compound called theanine, right? Which a lot of people take as a supplement. The theanine, which occurs in matcha and different types of green tea, which remember green tea has some caffeine, stimulates the brain, kind of in a way that coffee does. But it also has the opposite. It has theanine, which calms the mind and people take to fall asleep at night. Remember, this is more how green tea is used historically. It's not as a stimulant, it's to focus your mind. It was originally used only by monks who wanted to be able to meditate for longer periods of time, stay calm, but also stay alert. So green tea got really popular in Asia. It became a cultural phenomenon like thousands of years ago. Okay. Green tea. Okay. Next one, holy basil. Very similar to rosemary, and that is going to increase blood flow to the brain. And it has a lot of those nervine calming properties. On a clinical level, we know that rosemary and holy basil are very similar in that they're very good for people who have early stage of dementia and Alzheimer, where they have a lot of brain fog, very mentally foggy and unclear. A lot of times loved ones will say the person looks hazy, like their brain is just hazed over. So we also use holy basil for any kind of disease where people have brain fog, like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and Lyme's disease, and depression, right? So it has those antioxidants that protect the brain, but it also has all the circulatory effects. It's also very mood uplifting also. Okay, these are still nootropics. I'm just gonna throw this out because I don't use this herb a whole lot, even though I have it. I don't use it a lot, but I want you to just know it because there's quite a bit of research. Is club moss, used a lot in Europe. It has a compound in it called cuperazine. Cuperazine has been, shown to directly cross the blood-brain barrier and increase like kind of instant memory, focus, improvement. So it's called club moss. It's sometimes advertised as this Huperzine, Huperizine. Or Huperzia. It goes by a bunch of different like marketing names. But this is one I use sometimes for like dementia and the early stage of Alzheimer. It works well, but it's just kind of hard to find it in America. You can only usually find it in like a processed capsule. There's only one company that we get from in a tincture that's kind of rare. So there's a lot of research with it though. So you can find it as a capsule. Okay. Next one. This one's a new one on the scene. Mushroom. Guess which one?
Cordyceps.
Lion's mane, right? My most favorite mushroom to eat, one of the most delicious mushrooms ever. Go to the farmer's market in Village Point and just buy it by the pound and eat it all summer. It's so delicious. Just butter. That's all you need, butter. Lion's mane. Maybe a little salt, pepper. Doesn't take much. So lion's mane mushroom is the white one that looks really funky, almost like a fungus. Let me pull a picture of it up. If nobody. You got one? So lion's mane, this is a new player because we never really used lion's mane much before until Paul Stamets kind of made it popular. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Cloud, sometimes called cloud fungus. It looks like a cloud. It's like a psychedelic cloud. It looks like in nature, if you ate this, you would trip out. I'll pass it out. You won't, but it's delicious. It's so delicious.
You can get that at Exist Green and Dundee.
Where at?
Exist Green.
What's that?
It's a store that is real green, you know,
Oh, yeah, I know what you're saying.
yeah, wooden colors,
They have fresh.
they have fresh, that you have to ask, you have cordyceps and powder. You know, but everything is natural and you have to bring your own bags. But they do have that.
Okay, that's cool. Sometimes Natural Grocers has lion's mane. I've seen it there occasionally, but the Village Point, there's a local guy that grows it and they're huge. They're beautiful. They're really cheap too.
Would you just chop them up and saute them?
Mhm. They're thick inside. Yeah, they're delicious. They're kind of bland, like a little flavor, but kind of blandish, but they cook up really well. You know, like,
Farmers
you know, like a moral will just like disintegrate, break down, they just retain like a really firm texture. Kind of like eating what's the other really mushroom that keeps its texture of the orangish one.
Chanterelle.
Chanterelle, they're kind of, yeah, but they're huge though, they're really thick, you gotta like cut through them, so it's very cool. So, but we need to put lion's mane in its place because it's overhyped and overmarketed. So lion's mane, as far as we know, we don't have a lot of research on it. This is just some of the original research that Paul made the world aware of. It does not appear to affect blood flow to the brain. Does not appear to affect neurotransmitters. Its effect is then neuroregenesis, meaning helping to regrow new brain cells or neuron cells.
Neuro what? Genesis?
Neurogenesis.
Neurogen.
Neurogenesis. The genesis meaning to create, to give birth to. Nerve cells. So it's used specifically when people have had damage to the brain. But to me, when you take lion's mane, I mean, clinically speaking, what I get from it is that it does not make your brain feel like when you take ginkgo, you feel really like alert. It's more, you don't really feel a lot from it. But you know that there is good repair happening, but you don't feel it a lot compared to like other herbs. So it's often promoted for like memory, but it's really more like in prevention of Alzheimer's or the slowing of Alzheimer's and dementia. But if you give it to like a patient or client with these dementia or Alzheimer's, you just have to understand it's just slow acting long-term. It's slowing the process, but they might not really ever notice anything from it. So it's important to remember that. It's getting more research lately. You can grow it yourself, right? Okay. Questions on lion's mane?
Where did you say you got it, Nicholas? Village Point?
Village Point Farmers Market, there's a local guy that grows mushrooms there. In like a greenhouse, I think,
Okay.
really cheap.
Any specific days or did?
I have it twice a week. I don't know if it started yet.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay. Next one, reishi mushroom. We talked about this quite a bit. Reishi has again, this nerve tonic part, this immune system part, making it kind of unique, right? And it also has especially this antioxidant part. And remember, reishi in Chinese medicine is the ultimate mind tonic to create feelings of calm, relaxed, focused mind and heart also. So reishi is really good for people that have like a history of stroke that might cause like memory loss. It's for people that are recovering from a stroke. People who have a lot of toxin exposure, people who have a lot of autoimmune diseases and immune system dysfunction. Okay. Those are the only like nootropics, meaning to me, what I think like my definition of a nootropic is when you take it, you better feel like something from it. So lion's mane, I mean, it gets put in that category a lot, and we'll talk about it here, but to me, when I think of a nootropic, it's kind of like when I think of an adaptogen, you still have to have energy from it. So some things to me are not an adaptogen, so they're not energizing. I think some things are really not truly nootropics. So those are the nootropic herbs. The things you're probably gonna, together with the circulatory herbs we talked about last week, like ginkgo and rosemary, the ones you're really gonna feel the effects from right away. All the other things we're talking about are slow acting. Okay, so the next group of herbs is going to be the adaptogens. And we could group together adaptogens with immune modulators. Okay, so we're going to do both adaptogens and immune modulators. So most of these are already talked about, right? We talked about reishi already. So the other herb that's been shown as American ginseng has been shown by its adaptogen effect, an immune modulating effect to slow the progression of a lot of memory disorders. It's going to be better suited, obviously, for someone who's really also very fatigued and lethargic. Remember, as people's dementia and Alzheimer's progresses, there's different stages where, you know, lethargy can be like a big stage, and then there's stages where, you know, eventually anger shows up from there's so much change with the brain. That's the hardest part for people who, family members and caregivers. That's usually when people have to go to the Alzheimer's unit, when the anger phase of like Alzheimer's shows up. Very hard for family members, you know, because the person's already kind of lost a lot of their memory and their physical functioning, and then, you know, the anger comes out. And it's just really conflicting. I mean, you can imagine this was like your parent or spouse, and you have to make the call when to do that. It's the right call, but it's because it's too much for people, you know. How many people have seen that? Maybe a lot of people. It's very, very sad. So to me, things like Gatu Cola really and reishi start to show up as being more important in this later stage. Because remember, when they go to the anger stage, because of all the brain changes. The Coca-Cola can be helpful for at least kind of like, you're not gonna stop it, but you could reduce the intensity of it for sure. We've seen that happen. So the clients, you know, before their spouse was, they're considering putting them in a memory unit. They felt like they extracted a lot of benefit from things like Coca-Cola at this stage of it. So, yeah.
What do you think of like Lewy body when they have sort of like these crazy apocalyptic hallucinations, stuff like that?
That's right, like still a lot of the Coca-Cola and mushrooms, yeah, when they're seeing relatives and all kinds of things. Yeah, some of it to me seems kind of almost spiritual. It's really amazing what happens, but yeah, but to me, the things like, that's why, you know, that's why really things like lion's mane and, you know, ashwagandha that protect the healthy cells of the brain. You might not notice them much, but that's kind of like the goal, is that you're trying to slow the progression of that more dramatic, like actual damage to the brain tissue that's going to create some of these more dramatic things at the end of life. Everybody know that, like Alzheimer's, like any disease, is a progression of inflammation and damage to the brain. So even though people might not, this is where you have to like talk to family and spouses or, you know, parents or children, that even though people, they may not see a change on their loved one from some of these things like ashwagandha or lion's mane, it's the long-term gain that it's doing, right? That makes sense. You're just trying to slow those physical changes to the brain that are really hard to reverse once they happen. To me, there's nothing better than Coca-Cola for that personally. Remember, just one of the best things we can do for brain health is just circulation, right? It's just for all of us. Blood flow. Waking feel is such a great benefit.
Well, that why working out is so good for.
Working out too, yeah, exactly. Yeah, working out is one of the best things you can do for brain health. Okay, so I have seen the circulatory stimulating herbs probably do more than anything at the onset of dementia and Alzheimer's and memory loss. Remember, people don't have to have Alzheimer's with dementia. There's other just memory loss from aging process, or just people being of like kind of ill overall health. They're going to have a lot of memory loss as people age. Also, memory loss from traumatic brain injury, like someone had head trauma. These circulatory stimulating herbs to me are the most dramatic and most like pronounced, where you can see changes. So again, rosemary, ginkgo, two of the most important standards, right? Did we mention sage leaf at all? In that category. Let's maybe jump back to the circulatory stimulant category. We'll come back to adaptogens. But I don't think we talked about sage leaf. So this is garden sage leaf, very similar to ginkgo. It's interesting. Increases blood flow to the brain, has been shown to specifically slow the development of dementia and Alzheimer's. Very much nervine, right? Affects these neurotransmitters. It's very similar to rosemary, just from the sense of it's just not like, to me, when you take sage, you don't feel necessarily that mind focus that you would feel from like a rosemary or ginkgo, but it has all the same properties. And remember, sage traditionally is considered an herb of the mind and of the brain. And in most cultures, it would be an herb of what we call the north, which would be where people go for wisdom. And so, I mean, just even the term sage associated with the plant to me is really important. So, remember, we give people sage when we want patients to be able to connect to like the sage within themselves and higher states of thinking and mental functioning to think beyond the ordinary trivial world. So it's like a really important herb that doesn't get a lot of attention. It's very powerful and very, very common. Very, very cheap, right? So, and for that, we can make a vinegar out of it and just add it to dressings. We can cook with it, tincture it, capsules, tea, it all works great. So we kind of think we did forget sage. Let's see if did we cover sage in class yet?
Yeah.
Okay, I might have gave you some of those notes within that on memory and concentration. Okay. We did talk about valerian here, right?
Yeah.
Gave the case example of that. Did I give you that case example? No? So remember, valerian, even though it's considered sedative and calming, it actually is a cerebral circulatory stimulant. That's why for about 20% of people, it just makes their mind wake up for insomnia, right? Has the opposite effect. But it is actually very warming and blood moving and increases blood flow to the head. And Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine, valerian opens up like secret pathways into the brain that we don't yet understand. Like energetic pathways and what we call secret channels. So I had one Alzheimer's patient who just was in the beginning stages and their spouse was really concerned because they were like slipping. And I think I'd seen them like 3 months ago and then again, and even when I met with them, I could tell like there was like a change. And the whole family was on board, like all the daughters, I think the grandchildren, the wife, everybody was on board with this. All I did was we just added 12.5 milliliters of valerian to 2 ounce tincture. Just made like one single change. And like the entire, all ages of the family noticed it within a couple of weeks. Like an improvement, like the reduction in symptoms. So it's a really good herb to think of. It's just hard to wrap your head around that this is a sedative herb most of the time, but it does increase blood flow to the brain. And it does kind of have all these chemical-like effects on the brain. So all the Ayurvedic brain, nerve, Alzheimer's wellness all have valerian in them. And I think it's like a really wise thing to consider. I mean, we know it's like a great muscle relaxer too, right? Okay. So another circulatory herb that we forgot to mention too was our friend saffron. Saffron, the very expensive spice, has gotten all kinds of research lately from the Middle East. It has been shown to, and studies, slow and even reverse Alzheimer's to some degree. And mostly it's again, blood flow to the brain, and it's one of the most powerful antioxidants that we know of, ounce for ounce on the planet, right? And the problem is it's just really expensive. So we usually have to take it as like a concentrated capsule. It's about the only way you can give it to somebody. We tinctured it and it works good. We did a 1 to and ensure. And then when I use it, I only put like 3 drops in a whole 2-ounce bottle. Seems to work really well. The capsules you can buy are about one of the more common ways to do it. Otherwise, you have to buy spice and just make a tea out of it. It only takes 3 little stigmas to make a whole tea, right? Just remember the little hairs? We looked at that, like 3 little hairs, that's a whole cup of tea. Does not take much, it's that powerful. So this is a really, really powerful new addition. And again, there's a lot of in studies that show it just shows a lot of promise for even really preventing. I mean, really Alzheimer's, dementia, to me, really, and seeing so many patients with it, it's really just prevention is the best way to do it. Slow the progression and just allow it to really not really kind of develop and settle in, so to speak. And that just takes a lot of forward thinking. You know, you have a family history yourself. You know, you really want to know from your family members of what age this kicks in, and about 20 years ahead of time, you just start it up. You know, if this happens when people are in their 70s or 80s, and like, you know, when you're 60, you just start ending your brain health mysteriously. Okay. You know, all the things to lose, the brain is probably the worst. Okay. Okay, those are a couple of circulatory stimulants that I don't think we really covered. So go back to adaptogens. We have American ginseng. We also have Chinese ginseng. Very similar, right? What's really interesting about American and Chinese ginseng is that, you know, dementia is really, really common in diabetics at the end of life because diabetes is such a disease of chronic inflammation. So to me, I really, really love American and Chinese ginseng for diabetics who also have a family history of dementia, Alzheimer's, way before they have any problems. It's going to help to prevent some of that stress in the body.
That Chinese ginseng or both Chinese and American?
Both have been shown to protect the brain in different ways, but there are also those adaptogens and immune modulators. And then I think, did we talk about Shazandra last week? Okay, so the last adaptogen immune modulator is going to be Shazandra berry. This one's more researched a lot in Asia. And there's quite a bit of research showing it can also slow, possibly reverse dementia, Alzheimer's with age-associated memory loss. It's also used for people that have had a loss of consciousness, like you've had a stroke, you've had a head trauma, you've had a heart attack, and you've had memory loss, you had a near-death experience. A lot of these studies out of China show Shazandra is really good for that, and it affects more the immune system and like this antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. Remember in Chinese medicine, we talked about last week, the kidneys control the brain. Kidneys are an extension of the brain, it's an extension of the kidneys. So that's why we can't also underestimate these longevity herbs like American ginseng and Shazandra and Chinese ginseng. But there's quite a bit of research on Shazandra. It's pretty impressive from like Chinese journals. There's a famous Chinese formula that basically the 2 key ingredients, it's been shown to help Alzheimer's and dementia. The 2 key ingredients are Shazandra berry and walnut. Walnut is like a superfood for the brain, just like the walnuts we eat. And then what they do is they put in like some circulatory herbs, and there's an herb that's similar to calamus that like opens up everything into the brain. So it's like a really simple formula. It's a very ancient formula, but it's quite well researched.
What's that called?
The Chinese name of the formula is Bunawan. It's called Clear Mind. Clear Mind, yeah. Like a lot of other companies make it's called Bunawan, but Shuzandra is like the key leading ingredient, and there's walnut. So they put in like something that's basically, to me, calamus would be even better in there. So, you guys look tired. Mentally tired. You need more, should have more ginkgo today or something more mind. Just remember, smoking, drinking, drugs of any kind, like, anything, stress is going to cause all this inflammation and all these processes in the brain. So we need to think about our brain health in addition to our liver health and heart health, right? And then again, I just want to emphasize really just prevention. If people start to exhibit memory symptoms, just jump on it right away. We talked last week about, remember, some of those medication drugs like Benadryl that have been shown to cause dementia now, that we just cut those things out of your life. Yeah, if you have to use them occasionally, but you should not be using any of those medications long term. So, okay. What do you want to do for class next Saturday? Not this one, but 13th is Mother's Day. I can't believe I did that. Sorry.
We're gonna do tongue and pulse.
We can maybe do a tongue and pulse class, eyes, ears, nails. Yep. Let's do that.
That'd be great.
Good idea, Jim.
So there'll be Mother's Day. Yep. We'll do eyes, ears, face, nails, and then move into tongue, hair, body posture, assessment. And then we'll do, if we get time, we'll do some pulse. Okay, that'll be cool.
One question.
Yeah, one question.
Are there any herbs that you can take when you're eating sugar to offset the effects of sugar?
I mean, there's not, not necessarily like dramatically. The question is about sugars. And
Cinnamon.
herbs. There's not a lot of, there's some herbs that have been shown to block the absorption, but it's pretty minor. Like you're talking a couple of grams, which is like fourth of a tablespoon of carbs, so relatively speaking, they're not gonna do much. And just all the other blood sugar herbs, they just don't work quick enough to like have some kind of. So, I don't know, it would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody should play around with some of the memory herbs. Like I said, if you're ever feeling depressed or tired, sometimes it's just like a brain thing too. And some of these herbs can really sometimes pick you up as much as like ginseng or something. That really, even for depression, a lot of depression is poor circulation to the brain. So herbs are also really good for depression and mood disorders and that. So they're helpful in a lot of different ways. Yeah. Yeah, I feel that boost immediately.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
All of the
Thank
Thanks, Rachel.
See ya, yeah.
Have a good week, friends.